Am I audible? Hope you might have tried tracing the a priori algorithm. If any doubts or any issues with respect to a priori, you can ask me now. No one tried to trace the algorithm. I had asked you to trace the a priori algorithm, right? There's a basic algorithm. So without understanding it, without tracing it, it is difficult for us to move forward. So if you have no queries, let me continue then. Yeah. So last class we have seen how to find the frequent patterns using the a priori algorithm, right? So today we'll see how we can generate association rules. So association rules that are useful and that are of interest to a particular user. So to determine that any given rule is interesting or useful, we use two measures. One is the support and the other one is the confidence. So we need to check both the minimum threshold for support as well as confidence. So now by using the a priori algorithm, when we get the frequent item sets at the end, so then what happens is already would have checked for the minimum support threshold. If any item set, if it is not satisfying the minimum support threshold, it won't be a frequent item set. So the output of a priori is all frequent item sets. So because they are frequent item sets, naturally we would have checked the minimum support threshold. Now using those frequent item set, we need to generate the association rules. And to decide whether they're interesting or not, useful or not, we need to check with the minimum threshold confidence. So this is how we can find. Suppose if you have only two item set or item set of size 2, you know how to find the confidence, right? We have an equation, isn't it? It is probability of A by B, right? Given A, what is the probability of B? So given an item set, what is the probability that other item sets, the other item also occur along with this item? Now, whenever the size of frequent item sets is more than 2 or 3 or more than 3, then we can use these steps, whatever is given here. So for each frequent item set x is small l, generate all non-empty subsets of L. So what are the frequent item sets? From where you get it? It's the output of the a priori algorithm. So we have with us the output as union of L1, L2, L3 and so on. Okay, that is the complete set of frequent items. So this is the small l. Small l is an index into the frequent item sets. So we need to take each of the items that are frequent and generate all non-empty subsets of that L.
व्हाइट शीट लगा देंगे तो हो जाएगा ना.
वो तो मुझे पता है, चंद्र लग जाती है.
अरे बट क्यों चाहिए?
Yeah, please mute yourself. So once we have non-empty subsets of this L, what we do for every non-empty subset S of L. So again, this S is an index into this L. Suppose if I say that I have a frequent item set 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. So what are the non-empty subsets of 1, 2, 3, 4? It is 1, then 2, then 3, then 4, then 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 2, 3, 2, 4, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 4, 2, 3, 4, and so on, right? So they are all the subsets. So this S is an index into that subset. Okay. So then output the rule S implies L minus S. This is how we generate the association rules whenever we have the items that are of size 3 are greater than 3. So when can we output such kind of a rule? It depends upon a condition. What is the condition? If support count of L divided by support count of S is greater than or equal to minimum confidence, only then we are going to output this rule. Suppose if it is not greater than or equal to minimum confidence, then we don't generate such rules, or else if we have generated the tool also, we are going to discard such rules which are not going to satisfy this minimum confidence threshold. So this is the example already we have seen in the last class, right? So you can see here we generated all the unique item sets, then scan the database, then counted the support of each of the item, then compare that with the minimum threshold 2. So the items with the support 2 are less than 2 or not frequent. Remaining items are frequent, and that gives us our L1. From L1 we generate the candidate item sets of size 2. Then again scan the database for second time to count the support of these items, and these are all the supports. Again check for minimum threshold for the support counts. The items which are satisfying the minimum threshold become L2, that is frequent set of size 2. Then from L2 generate the candidate item set of size 3, then perform pruning here. What is pruning? You find the subset, proper subsets of each of these sets and check whether all these subsets of a given item set is present in L2 or not. If not, we are going to prune that item. So in this example, all these 3 items are pruned and we are left with C3. This is the C3 after pruning. So again, you read the database to count the support of this item set EKO. It is compared with the minimum threshold. If it is greater, we are going to get the L3, that is frequent item set of size 3. And this is our final answer, right? So now you can observe here, using a priori, we are able to generate all the frequent item sets. And these are all the individual item sets which satisfy the minimum support threshold. And if you look into these 2 item sets of size 2, all these items with the size 2, they also satisfy the minimum support threshold. And to find the association rule, what you need to do is, you know, right, how to find the association rule given to item set, that is E implies K and then K implies E. So what is the formula? If I say E implies K, numerator will be the count of transactions which contain both E and K together, and denominator will be having only the count of E. Similarly, if I write a rule K implies E, numerator remains same, that is the count of EK. EK count is 4 here, then divided by the count of K. Count of K is 5. So 4 by 5 is the confidence of the rule K implies E, And if I write that as E implies K, then the equation would be 4 divided by 4, that is 100, right? So E implies K, confidence is 100%, and K implies E, the confidence is 4 divided by 5. Similarly, it is possible for us to write the equations to find the confidence of all these items. The moment it becomes 3 or greater than 3, then we need to use the step that I have shown you just in the previous slide. Now let us just try for this one, EKO. So again, I have given the steps for your reference to the same steps. So now we can say this is a small L, that is EKO, and the minimum confidence threshold given here is 70%. So what it says, for each frequent item set L, generate all non-empty subsets of L. So first step is generate all non-empty subsets. This is our L. So as part of first step, we have generated here all non-empty subsets of L. So what are the non-empty subsets? EK, then EO, then KO, then E, K and O, right? These are all the non-empty subsets of this L. This is the first step. The next step is for every non-empty subset S of L. As I told you, S is an index into this L. Now this is our L and small s is the index. So first S is pointing to EK, then it points to EO, then KO and so on. So S is nothing but the index into this L. So for every non-empty subset S of L, output the rule S implies L minus S. Now observe here, this is our L, EKO, and this is subset of L. So to begin with, small s, it will be pointing to the first item set, that is EK. Just I have written here S equal to EK. Now output the rule S implies L minus S. So we are outputting the rule here. Yes. What is S? S is EK. So EK implies, what is the rule? S implies L minus S. Okay. So L is EKO. So L minus S is EK now. So EKO minus EK gives us O. And that's what I have written here. EK implies O. S implies L minus S. This is the L, I repeat, this is the L, this is the subset of L, and small s we are using as the index into the subset of L. So once we do this, we need to output the rule S implies L minus S. So because S is EK here, LHS becomes EK implies O. How did we got this O? It is L minus S. L is EKO and S is EK. So EKO minus EK gives me O. Hence, I am able to get this rule EK implies O. So this is the rule and I need to check whether it is satisfying the minimum confidence threshold or not. So I am writing here confidence of this rule, that is EK implies O equal to 3 by 4. So how am I getting this 3 divided by 4? You can see here further rule if. So this is the thing, right? Support count of L. So what is L? L is EKO. So support of EKO is 3. I'll just go back to the previous slide once. You can see here EKO. Okay. So support of EKO is 3. And then support of EK is 4 here. Okay. That's how numerator is 3 because numerator is support count of L. So you can see here for all the rules, numerator remains the same because we are considering this L EKO. Hence, the count of EKO remains same 3 throughout all these things. Denominator may vary. So this is support count of L divided by support count of S. So what is S? S, it is written here at EK. Support of EK, I just shown you in the last slide. EK support count is 4. So support count of L divided by support count of S, that is 4. So 3 by 4, it gives me 75. Sorry, it has to be 75. I'll correct it. So please note it as the 75%. Right? 3 by 4 is 75. Similarly, next what happens? Yes, S is pointing to EO now. So S equal to EO. Generate the rule. What is the rule? S implies L minus S. So S is EO. L is again same EKO. So EKO minus EO gives us K. So find the confidence of this rule. So confidence of EO implies K equal to support count of L, that is EKO, which is 3, then support count of S. S is EO here. So I'll just show you the support count of EO. You can see here support count of EO is 3. Right? So it becomes 3 by 3 equal to 100%. Right? So this is how we are able to get the confidence of all the association rules. Similarly, it continues. Okay. So next S points to KO. So S is KO. Next tool is KO implies E. So next S becomes E here. You can observe when S equal to E, it is E implies KO. How we are getting this KO? Again, it's the same thing, right? L minus S. So L is EKO, S is E. So if you remove E from EKO, we are left with KO. Hence the rule E implies KO. So confidence of E implies KO. So this is the count of L. EKO support count is 3 and this one is the support count of this item E. So 3 by 4 is 75%. So similarly, we are having the other rules also. And after computing all this, if I observe here, the given minimum support threshold is how much it is? 70% it is given here, right? So you can observe all these counts 75% and 100, 100, 75, 60 and 100. So except this rule, all other rules are having their minimum confidence as 70 or more than 70. Hence, we retain all these rules and we are going to remove these rules. Either we should not generate this rule, otherwise, if you are generated after checking this minimum threshold count, we will come to know that it is not interesting, it is not useful. How we will come to know? By comparing the actual confidence value with the threshold value. So if it is less than that, then we are going to remove this and we are not considering this rule K implies EO. Suppose if in the previous example, instead of, along with EKO, if we would have some other frequent items here, then for that items also we need to repeat the same procedure. Okay. So this is how we are able to get this association rules. So now you can see we have all the frequent item sets with us and all the rules that are interesting based on the frequent item set. So I have shown here for the 3 item set. So I repeat, for the item sets which are of size 2, directly you know the confidence equation, you can write the rules and you can find out whether they're interesting or not. For example, E implies K. Okay. So if I want to generate a rule, I'll write here that top something like this. So this is E implies K, right? So E implies K, which is equal to, numerator is the support count of both of these, that is EK. The count of EK is how much? It is 4 here, 4 divided by support count of E. Support count of E is 4. So it is 4 by 4 equal to 1 or 100%. Similarly, if I try to find the rule K reverse, that is K implies E, then numerator remains the same. Only thing denominator becomes 5 because the count of K is 5. So the support of K implies E is 4 divided by 5. Similarly, you need to find out the rules for others, as you can find out directly using the confidence equation. So whenever we are having the frequent items that are of size 3 or greater than 3, then we are required to follow these steps. Is this fine? Any doubts, anyone?
Mom, why does the numerator remain the same? And like in the previous, like e to k, you took 4 by 4, but k's value was 5, right?
One second. Let me answer your first question. The first question is why am I taking 3 here, right, for all? You can see this is the rule we are trying to output. S implies L minus S. Okay. And for this rule, this is the numerator, support count of L divided by support count of S. And I'm doing with respect to this L EKO, right? And the count of EKO is same. Numerator is support count of L and my L in this example is EKO. So because the count of EKO is 3, so all these rules, the numerator remains 3 only because I'm doing with respect to this L. These are the subsets of L, right? The rule is S implies L minus S. Is this clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So this is S implies L minus S. So here S is EK, then S is EO, then S is KO. But for all these S, L remains the same, right? L is EKO. It is a support count. Support count once we compute, it won't change. So this is the 3. Then if I want to answer a second question, that is this one you are asking, right? So here I am taking 2 item set. EKO is a 3 item set. So for the item sets with a size 3 or more than 3, we need to follow those steps. That is, S implies L minus S if support count of L divided by support count of S is greater than or equal to minimum confidence threshold. If it is less than 3, we have the equations with us, right? In the first class, I had shown you how to find the confidence. So if I take this EK, so it means E implies K. We have 2 rules here. One is E implies K. Second rule is K implies E. What does it mean? If I say E implies K, that means that whenever any customer purchases the item E along with E, how many of them are also purchasing K? That's why I told it's a conditional probability. Given A, how many times K also occurs with E? Suppose if I say my rule is K implies E, then what happens? It is whenever any customer purchases the item set K, along with K, how many times customers are also purchasing the item E. For example, here if I say E implies K, numerator is together. How many times E and K are purchased together by the customers? So here already we have the count of EK. If you look into this database, so here we have EK, then here one more, then here you can see this is E and K. So there are 4 transactions containing these 2 items E and K together. So hence this is the numerator. Okay. Denominator is the count of E. It's a conditional probability. That's what I told you. So given E, how many times E and K are occurring together? So you can see the count of E is 4 here. So hence it is 4. And suppose if I reverse this rule, if I write K here instead of E, and if I write E in place of K, then this becomes K implies E. So K implies E, again numerator is 4 because E and K are K and E are together occurring in 4 transactions, isn't it? So the numerator is 4 only. Okay. Now what about the denominator? Which is denominator is value of K. Given K, how many times E is also there along with K? Okay, you can see the value of K is 5 here. K you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So all the transactions we have K here, but only 4 transactions are having E along with K. The count of K is 5. Hence, the confidence of the rule K implies E is 4 divided by 5 or 0.8 or 80%. Is this okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. If you want, I'll just go back to the initial slides. just to recall. Right? Are you able to recall this? So we have given the equations here, support and then the confidence. Support is, we are counting how many times these two item sets are occurring together. So confidence is A implies B, probability of B given A, right? Support count of A and B together divided by support count of A. A is our LHS and A and B together it is our RHS. A can be anything, A and B can be anything in general. So you can see here, let's solve one example here, right? So you can see here, there is a difference between these two rules, especially the confidence, because the numerator remains same, okay? But denominator may be same, may not be same, it depends upon our database. So you need to remember these two equations. And as I told you, don't get confused with the symbol union. It is not union. Actually, the meaning here is the count of A and B occurring together. Okay. So why I showed you here, because we know how to generate the rules given two item set. So the item set is 3 or 4 or more than 3 items are in the item set, then directly we cannot write it. So these are the steps how we can do. The meaning here it is same. If you observe, okay, what we want to say is given this, right? We are trying to find for this L here. Suppose along with EKO, if I have one more frequent item set as size 3 or 4, then once I complete, again I need to find the subset of that. So the small l becomes the index into my frequent item sets. Because this example we had only one item with the size 3, I shown you for this EKO. And S is just the index into this S. So this ensures that we are able to generate all possible rules. Okay. Is this clear now? Any doubts still, anyone? How to find the rules, how to find the values? So please solve, that's why I'm telling you, you need to study this regularly, okay? So need to trace the a priori algorithm, get the frequent item sets, and then try to trace these 3 steps also to generate the association rules. So that's about the a priori algorithm. And please note that whatever the steps I have shown you for generating, yeah, you need to mute yourself. पहले ही पता था कि अगर मेरे जो भी कनेक्शन बनेगी स्प्लिट सोलर में, मैं उनको वो चीज पहनाऊंगा ताकि हाँ भाई सब सावधान हो जाओ, ये मेरी बंदी है, ठीक है ना? किसी ने इसकी तरफ आंख उठा के देखना भी नहीं है, वो मेरी दी है. Yeah. You want me to stop the class and mark absent for all? I'm so happy and I can't express. I mean, मैंने एक्सपेक्ट नहीं किया था कि मुझे ऐसा लड़का मिलेगा जिसके साथ इतना जल्दी मेरा कनेक्शन होगा. सिद्धिशा बैनर्जी. था वैसे ही मिला. जैसे कि मैंने एक्सप्रेस किया. सिद्धिशा बैनर्जी. Yes, sir. You are logging into the class and you are busy with your cell phones and other things. So please behave yourself. So this is the reason I told you that I'll not be sharing the PPT, because you don't listen in the class, right? You want PPT to study for your exams. That's the reason I'm telling you, you need to have your notebook with you, note down whatever I'm telling you. Think as if you're sitting in a class. Okay? I need to study regularly, and any doubts you can ask me in the class or before the next class. And I will not be entertaining any kinds of doubt solving during your exams, assignments, or the class test. Yeah. So anyone is having any doubts on association rules? What I was telling is, a priori, 3 examples I have solved in detail all the steps one by one, right? So in the other algorithms, whatever we will be discussing, I may not go in detail because already I have put enough time in a priori. So candidate generation and generating the frequent item set from that candidate item, it is same as a priori in some other algorithms also. So there I might not show these steps again and again, but you need to write those steps maybe in your assignments, tests or exams. And then coming to association rules also. So we have different algorithms that we would be discussing here, which helps us in generating the frequent item sets. So once we have frequent item sets, generating association rules is same. It is not different for different algorithm. Different algorithms help us in generating the frequent item set, isn't it? So once we have frequent item sets, then generating the association rule, finding the confidence, comparing the minimum confidence threshold, they are all remain the same. So hence, for other algorithm, I may not do this association rules because it is the same thing. Okay. So advantages and disadvantages of a priori. So uses large item set property. So what does it mean? Uses large item set property means we are not determining candidates of all size. Suppose if a supermarket is having say thousands of items, okay, if we don't consider this property, then what happens? First we generate all the one item set, then two item sets, then 3, 4, 5 and so on, isn't it? So just because supermarket is having say around 10,000 of unique items, none of the customer can purchase all those 10,000 items in a single go, right? We purchase only the items whatever we require. That's the reason the items that are present in the basket of this different customers will be vary. It is not, it cannot be the same thing. So whenever we, because we are going level wise from bottom to top, first generate one item set, then 2, 3, 4. Suppose if in a given shop, the item set maximum number of item set size is 5. We are able to generate yeah, sorry, I was disconnected for a while. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, sorry, there was a power cut, so disconnected from the Wi-Fi. Okay. So, because we are, suppose if I say that we are able to find L5. L5 is the frequent item set of size 5, right? So, if yeah, after L5, if you are not able to generate C5, if C5 is, I mean C6, so if C6 is empty, then we stop there, right? Our while loop ends and will come out. Suppose a shop might be having say around 20 items, and if you are able to generate L5 and if C6 is empty, we are going to stop our process. So we are not generating C6, C7, C8 till C15 or C20 just because they have 20 items, because we know that once we don't have a item set of size 6 which is frequent, definitely its superset also cannot be a frequent one, isn't it? So because we are using this particular property, we are not generating all the candidate item set, all possible candidate item sets we are not generating. Then easily we can parallelize this particular algorithm, because you can see that whatever may be the number of item sets, we can divide them into different sets, and the same algorithm can be applied on individual items, and finally we can combine all those items together. This will be looking into next. Then it's easy to implement. You have seen the algorithm and we have also traced, right? So we have the set of items, find the unique set of items, find the count of those items, then have your minimum support threshold, then determine your L1. So once you have L1, using a priori generate candidate item set, perform self join operation and generate C2. So once we have C2, again scan the database, count the support of each of the items in C2. Then compare that C2 support with the threshold and determine L2 and so on. So we keep on repeating this particular process. So the disadvantage is it assumes transaction database is memory resident. Suppose if I have a large database and the entire database cannot be fit into my memory, then it is difficult for us to use a priori directly as it is. If our database can fit into memory, then it is fine. Otherwise, if it is not fitting into memory, then what happens? Every time when you want to count all those transactions, we need to count the support, right? Every step, C2, C3, C4, every step, all the items, whatever we have, for all those candidates, we are supposed to count the support. By how do we get a support count? By reading the database. The database is not in memory, it is in our disk or some secondary storage medium. And reading those transactions to get the count from the secondary storage is a very time consuming process compared to the memory. So that's the limitation. Then requires many database scans. So whatever is the highest number of frequent items that we have, those many number of times we are supposed to scan the database. How we are scanning? For C1, right? To determine the count, support. For C1, we scan the database once, and when we have C2, second time we scan the database. C3, again we scan database for third time, and so on. So whatever is the maximum data we have of maximum frequent set, for every candidate, we are going to scan the database. Suppose if the maximum data set is say some 20 or 13, it means that we are supposed to scan the database 30 times, because every stage we need to get the support count of all those candidate item sets starting from C1 to C20. The limitations are algorithm can be very slow and the bottleneck is candidate generation. That is, if as the number of frequent item set size becomes larger, then it becomes a very slow, because we need to perform the join with itself for all those frequent item set to generate the higher items. Just one small example has been given you to understand the complexity. If there is a transaction database and which is having 10 power 4 frequent one item sets, they will generate 10 power 7 candidate 2 item sets even after employing the, though we say we are using the closure property. What is the property? It says that if a set is infrequent, its superset will also be infrequent, right? That's how we are trying to avoid generating all candidates. So though we are avoiding generating all candidates, but still we need to generate the large item sets as the number of transactions are more and more. So to compute these support more than minimum support, so it needs scan at every level. That's what I told you, right? C1, C2, C3, every level we are supposed to scan the database. So it requires n plus 1 scans. N is length of longest pattern. Why it is n plus 1? Why not n here? Can somebody say, try to answer this? Why is it n plus 1 and why not it is n here? Say for example, suppose I have L1, L2, L3. Okay, it means I have scanned the database 3 times, right? So from L3, now I'll be able to generate C4. Okay, suppose if all the items of C4, the count is less than the minimum support threshold, then I'll not be able to generate any L4 from the C4, right? But to know that C4 is empty here, the items that are there in C4 are not frequent, we have to scan the database. We need to scan the database to count the support of all the items that are present in C4. And suppose none of the items are satisfying the minimum support threshold, then our algorithm stops. But we have scanned the database 4 times, right? That's what is the meaning of this sentence. N is the length of the longest pattern. If L3, if 3 is the length of longest pattern, we would have scanned the database, or we need to scan the database n plus 1 number of times. So you can just note down this exercise for you. Please note down these two. Please practice these two. You follow the algorithm, trace the algorithm, get the frequent item sets. Also try to generate the association rules for these two. If you have any doubts, you can ask me on Monday, or before Monday also you can ask me. Please note down these two database. So you can see the second database here. It is neither A, B, C, D, nor 1, 2, 3. It is given the actual items, right? So if this is given, again you need to arrange them in the chronological order only. But if you think that while solving manually, you need to write these items every time in C2, L2, C3, L3, and so on. What you can do is, you can take only the first letter. For example, I can take B for bread, then M for milk, E for X, and so on. But suppose if you have two terms starting with the same letter, then you can take two letters instead of one. For example, here you can say here milk and meat, right? So I cannot use M for both of these items. So this is the case. You need to take the first two letters, right? So again, you need to arrange them. Please note, you need to arrange the input in the chronological order always. If it is already in the order, it is fine. If not, you need to order it. For example, here bread. So here we have MI, then here we have ME. So E comes before I, right? So I need to reorder this bread, meat, and then milk. See, right? And before ME, this J comes, isn't it? So first bread, then juice, then meat, then milk, followed by orange. So you need to arrange them. And because here in this example, we have two terms starting with the same. So all the items, you can use the first two letters. For example, I can say first transaction is BR, comma, MI. Then the second transaction is BR, comma, EG, comma, ME, comma, OR, something like that. Okay. But please note that you are not allowed to map these two numbers. You cannot say bread is one, milk is two, like that. So whenever the actual name of the item is given, don't map it to numbers. Don't map it to A, B, C, D blindly. Done? Over? Note it down.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, let me continue then. So just now we have seen what are the disadvantages and what are the limitations of a priori, right? So I told you the major challenge is multiple scans of the database. Then we have the, because to solve manually, to understand, we are using the small example to understand the concept, to understand the algorithm, right? But actually in reality, any malls you go, any shops you can see there thousands of items are there. So the computational complexity it becomes more. So tedious workload of support counting for candidates, because more number of candidates are there. Even if you think, because first time anyway you need to search or read all the transaction to search for the presence of that item, right? For example, if I say that I'm having say 20,000 unique item in my mall, it means for all those 20,000 items I need to find its count, and then from that 20,000 maybe I might get around say 18,000 items which are frequent. So for those 18,000 items, imagine I need to generate the candidate items of size 2, isn't it? So like that, that is the major problem here. So how we can improve the a priori? That's what research means. Either we can look into the existing algorithms, okay, and see what are these limitations. Is it possible for us to overcome those limitations? Then we can suggest some kind of improvement, and we can compare our results with the improvement and with the previous version. That is one part. The other part of research possibility is we don't go with the same way as the current researchers are going. We come up with totally a complete different kinds of solution. We look into the problem from the different perspective, different angle, and we come with our own different, entirely a different kind of solution. So there are the two possibilities if we talk about the research. So here many research have been done based on the a priori, because we know these are the problems. So many researchers have proposed many different kinds of solutions. So few we would be looking here. What are the different ways? One is reduce passes of transaction database scans, because we are telling, because we have more candidates, how we can reduce. Here what happens in a priori basic algorithm, it depends upon the number of frequent items with the highest size. So many number of times we are scanning the database. So is it possible for us to reduce the database scans? That is one thing. Otherwise, is it possible to reduce the number of candidate items itself? Should we generate all possible candidate items, or is it possible for us to reduce the number of candidates? The other possibility, other angle is facilitate support counting of candidates. Apart from this way, whatever is specified in basic a priori algorithm, is there any other way for us to count the support of candidate? Suppose assume that I'm not able to reduce the scan, I'm not able to reduce the number of candidates, but is there any way to make this support counting of this candidate faster? Okay, so there are the different angles from which we can think. So one of the possibility is partition. So the main idea in this algorithm, that is partition algorithm, was any item set that is potentially frequent in a database must be frequent in at least one of the partitions of the database. What does it mean is, I have a database with me, it is very huge, I cannot fit into memory. So what I do is, I divide it, I'll partition it into number, say this is the first partition, second partition, and so on. I'll divide my entire database into k different set of, or k different number of partitions. Okay, this is called as the partition algorithm. So here what we do is partition the database. So given the network support for transactions, because we are partitioning them into different blocks like 1 to up to k. So you find out what is the local support count for each of the partition. So at the end, if something is frequent, it has to be frequent in any one of these database block. That is the main idea behind this partitioning algorithm. So support of I. So sigma is the actual support count or actual support threshold. That is the minimum support threshold for the entire database. But when we partition, here what happens? The size of the database reduces. So accordingly, we need to find for this size of database, for this size of partition, what would be the minimum support threshold. So this we call it as the global support threshold, and these are the local thresholds. So partition algorithm, frequent sets are very few compared to the set of all item sets. Then it says that partition set of transaction to smaller segments so that each segment can be accommodated in main memory, right? So I told you one of the problem with a priori is it's assuming that database is memory resident. If it is not residing in memory, then it is difficult for us to apply a priori. So here partition algorithm, what it does is, given a large database which cannot be fit into the memory, you simply divide that entire database into smaller parts depending upon your size of memory. Then apply a priori on each of the parts one by one. So then compute final set of frequent item sets. So let us look into this details. So this algorithm does 2 scans of database. So a priori what I told is it requires n plus 1 number of scans, right? So here we are assuming or we are telling that given our database, we are ensuring the partitions in such a way that each partition fits into our memory. So the moment a database, a set of transactions are available in memory, whatever may be the number of transaction scans we do, it is immaterial because something is in memory and we are reading it, it becomes very faster compared to reading from the secondary storage devices. Okay. So it is exactly similar to the a priori. It is a priori only. Only thing is we are partitioning the given database into chunks depending upon the size of memory. Each time we bring each part into the memory and we apply a priori onto the partition. So what happens at the end? We would be having the frequent item sets of different sizes for that partition only. So like this, when we get all these partitions one by one into the memory, we would be having the frequent item sets for each of these partitions. So then finally we combine all of them and we find out their global support. So this algorithm contains 2 phases. So logically divide the database into number of non-overlapping partitions. Please note it is non-overlapping partition, and one more thing is a logical partition. We are not physically doing any kind of partition, it is just the logical partition. If you have n partitions, it means it may require n iteration because each partition we bring it to memory and we apply a priori on it. So n number of times we are applying a priori. So then when this is done, we merge frequent item sets from each of these partitions. So then local frequent item sets of same length from all partitions are combined. Suppose if I have say 4 partitions, then what I do? I'll take L1. What is L1? L1 is a frequent item set of size 1, right? So from all the 4 partitions, I take L1 and I combine all those L1. Similarly, next I take L2 from all those 4 partitions and so on. So frequent item set of same length from all partitions are combined to generate global candidate item sets. Why it is candidate? They are frequent item in their partition. But if I look into globally, overall number of transaction, I don't know whether it is frequent or not. It may be frequent, it may not be frequent. Hence, it becomes a candidate set for us. So we call it as the global candidate item set. So then second time we scan the database only for these global candidate item sets to check whether they are frequent or not. And that's how we have the 2 scans of database by using this partition algorithm. So it's the same thing what I told you just now. So we have local support, that is fraction of transactions containing given item set in a given partition. So local frequent item set means they are frequent with respect to that partition only. Okay. Let us see the algorithm. Please note down this algorithm. I'll give you 2 to 3 minutes. If it is there in notebook, it is easy for you to follow and understand what I do next, how we get tracing. I'll give you 2 to 3 minutes. Please note down this algorithm into a notebook. This is taken from Arun Pujari, but there is slight error in this step here in that book. That's the reason I have corrected and I'm giving you here. So please note down this only. So what happens is some algorithms in textbook, there because of typos, there are certain small errors. And if we retain that error and if we try to trace the algorithm, we may not be able to get the proper result. So what I do is I'll go back and refer the paper who have proposed this particular algorithm, and from that paper I try to give you the algorithm or the pseudocode. Okay, so that's the reason I'm asking you to note down this. It's available in Arun Pujari. Only this here, the merge phase, there is slight problem in Arun Pujari. So I'll just simplify it here for you to understand. So capital P, it's a partition database. T is the set of transactional, it's a transactional database. We are partitioning it, and N is the total number of partitions. So phase 1, for I equal to 1 to N, what are we doing? Read in partition Ti in P. Okay, this is a partition database. We are reading the first partition. Ti, T1, T2, T3, etc. will be having different partition. So to begin with, we take the first partition because the partitions will be such that they would fit into our memory. So we are going to bring that partition into the memory. Then you can see here, this is a superscript. Please note the notations carefully here. L superscript I. It means that its I stands for the partition. If I say L superscript 1, it means they are the frequent item sets that are present in the first partition. If I say here it has L superscript 2, it means that it refers to the frequent item sets that are present in the second partition, and so on. Subscript represents the size of the item set. Superscript we are using to represent the partition. Okay. So what are we doing here? To begin with, each partition we are getting into memory, then we apply a priori on that, and we are able to generate all sizes of frequent item sets for that partition. So once this is done, as I told you, what we do is we take the same frequent item sets of same size to get the global candidate item sets. So for that, there is a merge phase, that is k equal to 1 Lk of I. So here superscript I stands for the partition and k stands for the size of item set. So till if it is not equal to empty, what happens? I is varying from 1 to n. Why I is varying from 1 to n? Because we are telling I is the partition number. We need to get the frequent item set from all partitions. So it is I equal to 1 to n, then k plus plus. This is the subscript. So we need to do this for all possible candidate item set. So you can just observe here Ck of G equal to union I equal to 1 to n and Lk of I. So to begin with, what happens? K equal to 1, right? So I'll write here C1 and this superscript G stands for global. So this is global candidate set of size 1, K equal to 1, equal to union of Lk of I. To begin with, K is 1, right? I is also 1. So K is 1, you can see I is also 1. And this is union of I equal to 1 to n. What does it mean? It means I varies from 1 to n. So this is C1 of G equal to L1 of 1, then union L1 of, sorry, yeah. So L1 of 2, similarly union L1 of 3 and so on. Because how am I getting this? You can see here, this is K, right? So outer K is 1 to begin with. So C1 is equal to union of all Li's. I is varying from 1 to n. So K is 1. You can, that's the reason you can see it is 1, 1, 1. And this is I varying from 1 to n. Suppose if I have 3 partitions, it becomes L1 of 1 union L1 of 2 union L1 of 3. It means I'm merging or combining L1 of these 3 partitions together. Thereby I'm getting the candidate item set of size 1. So when this is done, then what happens? K plus plus. So now K becomes 2, right? So next loop what happens? K becomes 2. So it becomes C2 of G. It means the global candidate item set of size 2. So again you can see it is Lk of I. So this is L, subscript K is 2 now. So this is L2 and then the I again ranges from 1 to n. So here it is L1. Similarly, union of L, again K is 2 itself, L2 and I changes from 1 to 2. So it becomes L2 of 2. Then union again L2 of 3 and it continues. Okay, you can see here global candidate of size 2 is the union of all the frequent item sets of size 2 taken from all the different partitions, right? Similarly, this continues. So we are trying to take all the frequent item sets of same size from different partitions and that becomes our candidate item set. So textbook, this is what is the understand, this is what we're supposed to do. But the textbook, this K and it has been interchanged and the meaning would become different. So that has been corrected here and it has been given to you for your reference. Okay, so please refer this whatever I have given here. So that's about the phase 1. So phase 1, what happens? We bring the partitions into the memory and apply a priori for all those partitions. Once it is done, then you combine all the frequent item set from different partitions which are of same size to get the various global candidate item sets. Once the first phase is over, we move on to the second phase. The second phase, what we are doing? I equal to 1 to n. Reading again, second time you bring the partitions one by one. So for each partition, what are we doing? For all candidates C, that is part of this CG, we are trying to compute the support count of this C in the transaction TI. So we get the partition into memory. So these are all our candidate item set. So for these candidate item set, whatever the items are there, we try to find their support count in a particular partition. So then what happens? We get the second partition. So for the same candidate item set, we try to count the support in that second partition and so on. So we repeat this for all the partitions. So at the end, finally, we will be getting LG. L stands for frequent, G for the global item set. So the frequent global item set contains all those C's. It belongs to the candidate global items such that support count of them in the transaction is greater than or equal to sigma. Sigma is the minimum support threshold and the final answer is this LG. Is this clear? Any doubts? Partition algorithm. It is nothing but we are partitioning the large database into smaller partition so that the partitions are able to fit into memory. And for each partition in the first phase, we apply a priori algorithm and we are able to get the frequent item set. Frequent means there are locally frequent. Local stands in the sense in that partition. Whatever the items that are frequent in the partition, that we are able to get. In the merge phase, we combine all the local frequent item sets of same size so that we are able to get the global candidate item set. In the second phase, again we read in the partition and we count the support counter only these candidate item sets, not for all the candidates, because we know that they are frequent locally, but we don't know whether globally they are frequent or not. So hence, in the second phase, we read or we try to find the count of all these candidate items from all the partitions. So at the end, we would be having the actual count for all these candidate item set. So from that, whichever satisfies the minimum support threshold, they are going to become our final set of frequent items. Let us trace this. Okay. So this is the database I've taken here and have divided into 3 parts, right? So each part is having 3 transactions. Total number of transactions are 9. I am dividing into 3 partitions, each partition containing 3 transactions. And the minimum support count is given as greater than or equal to 3. So please note that the minimum support threshold is always with respect to the entire database. Okay. So in this partition algorithm, because we are partitioning and we are applying the a priori for individual partition, we need to find the local support. How do we find? For example, here for 9 transactions, if the minimum threshold is 3, then what is the threshold for 3 transactions? It is 1, isn't it? So you need to find the local support count. This is for this example. For 9 transactions, if I say support count is 3 minimum, it should be there. Then each partition contains 3 transactions. So for 9, if it is 3, just write down here. So for 9 number of transaction, support is 3. And if I'm having 3 number of transaction in each partition, right? So what is the support? It is 3 into 3 divided by this 9. So we'll get the answer as 1. Hence, this is the local support count is 1. And please note that I have traced the a priori in detail step by step for 3 different examples, and we're applying a priori for each of the partitions. So I'm not showing you again detailed a priori part. It's already done. But when you solve for your assignment, test or exam, you need to show those steps. Okay. So to begin with, let us say this is our first partition, and let us apply a priori on this first partition. You can see L1 superscript I'm using for the partition number. This is the first partition. So by applying a priori, I'm getting these frequent items of size 1, 2 and 3 here. Again I repeat, I am not showing you the a priori details because I already have traced 3 different examples. Okay. So I quickly tell you how I'm getting this. It is easy here in this example because the support count is 1, right? So first I'll see here what are the unique items in this partition. It is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. There are 5 unique items, isn't it? And because the support is 1, all are present at least once. Hence, all become frequent item sets of size 1. So, L1 is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So, from L1, I need to generate C2. What is C2? C2 is 1, 2, 1, 3, 1, 4, 1, 5. Then 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5. Then 3, 4, 3, 5 and 4, 5. Right? This is what C2 we get by using a priori candidate generation algorithm. So, I will be getting those many C2. So, for each C2, I need to read this first partition and I need to count and determine frequent item set that are L2. So, for example, here 1, 2, I'll see there is a count 1. So, it is a frequent one. So, it is the part of L2. Next candidate was 1, 3. If you look into this, there are no transactions which are supporting the items 1 and 3 together. Hence, the count of 1, 3 in this partition is 0 and hence it cannot be a part of this L2. So, 1, 2 is, 1, 3 is not here. Similarly, next candidate was 1, 4, right? So, you can see here again there are no transactions containing the items 1 and 4 together here. So, hence the count of 1, 4 is 0 and 1, 4 is not in L2. Next is 1, 5. So, 1, 5 is supported by the first transaction, its count is 1 and 1, 5 is part of L2. Next is 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5. You can see 2, 3 is here, 2, 4, 2, 5. So, the support count of all of them are 1 and because the threshold is also 1, they become the part of L2. Next is 3, 4 and 3, 5. You can see none of these transactions supporting 3 and 4 and 3 and 5 together. Similarly, there is no support for the candidate 4, 5. Okay. So, basically I am using the a priori and I am giving you only the frequent item set here. Okay. So, this is my L2. Now, from my L2, I need to generate C3. How do I generate C3? 1, 2 and 1, 5 gives me an item set 1, 2, 5. Similarly, if I compare 1, 2 with 2, 3, 2, 4, 2, 5, not possible to generate any new candidates. So, 1, 2 and 1, 5 gives me a new candidate 1, 2, 5. Similarly, 1, 5 if I compare with them, not possible to generate any new candidate item set. So, I'll move on to this 2, 3 now. So, 2, 3 and 2, 4 gives me 2, 3, 4. I'll just write here for your reference the candidate items. So, 2, 3, 4. So, this is one candidate item set that I am able to generate using the two candidates, that is 2, 3 and 2, 4. So, 2, 3 and 2, 4 gives me 2, 3, 4. Similarly, 2, 3 and 2, 5 I can combine because 2 and 2 are same and 3 is less than 5. Right? This is based on our join operation, a priori candidate generation algorithm that we have discussed in the last class. So, I am using the same method. So, 2, 3 and 2, 5 gives me one more candidate of size 3. That is 2, 3, item 5. Okay. So 2, 3 and 2, 5. One more candidate 2, 3, 5. Next I have 2, 4 and 2, 5, which gives me the candidate item 2, then 4, then 5. Okay. So I'm doing this by using a priori. So L2 I'm generating C3. C3 is 1, 2, 5, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 5 and 2, 4, 5. So there are 4 items in my C3. So what is the next step in a priori? After calling a priori generation algorithm, we are immediately calling that pruning function, right? So now I need to prune. I'll take this 1 to 5 and check all its proper subsets of size 2. What are the subsets of size 2? 1, 2, 1, 5, 2, 5. So 1, 2, 1, 5, 2, 5. All its subsets are present in L2. Hence, it becomes part of C3. We are not removing that from C3. Next, if I come to this 2, 3, 4, subsets are 2, 3, which is present in L2, then 2, 4, present in L2. But if you observe this 3, 4, so 3, 4 is not a part of L2. So hence, this 2, 3, 4 I have removed in my pruning step. Next is 2, 3, 5. So again, you can check 2, 3 is present in L2. 2, 5 is present, but 3, 5 is not present in L2, right? Even if one of the subset is not present in the previous frequent item, we are going to remove that from the candidate item. Next 2, 4, 5, again 2, 4 and 2, 5 is present, but 4, 5 is not a part of L2. So hence pruning is going to remove these 3 candidate items and I am left with only one candidate, that is 1 to 5. So after pruning I have 1 to 5. I'll read the database, this partition, to see the support count of 1 to 5. Support count of 1 to 5 is 1, which is satisfying the local support of 1. Hence I put 1 to 5 in this L3. Is this clear? So as I told you, I have not shown you because already we have spent enough time in a priori. 3 different databases I have shown you in detail all the steps. Okay, so I have not shown these steps here in detail, but we are using the a priori, and these are the 3 frequent item sets. So from 1 to 5, L3 we have only 1 to 5, so not possible to generate C4. C4 is empty and a priori stops here for this partition. So once a priori is done for the first partition, next what I am supposed to do? Get the second partition into the memory and again apply a priori for this second partition. Okay. Yeah. So you can see here L1, L2, L3 based on the second partition. Second partition we have 4 items, right? 1, 2, 3, 4. So L1 is 1, 2, 3, 4. Similarly, we have L2 and L3 through a priori algorithm, and I have shown you here these frequent item sets based present in our second partition. So once it is done, then get the third partition into the memory and apply a priori. So you can see here we have 1, 2, 3, 5. We have L4 also in this partition. Okay. So each partition you bring into memory and apply a priori. That's the reason I told you we require a priori for other algorithm also. You need to trace the a priori so that you are able to understand whatever we are discussing in the next coming classes, because many algorithms we use the same concept here. Okay. So I have not shown you again here a priori, but you need to show the steps of a priori when this phase of problem is given to you. Okay. Hope it is clear now. This is the first phase of the partition algorithm. What we do? Get the partition into the memory, apply a priori on that partition, get its frequent item sets. Then the second part of the first phase is merge phase, right? So merge phase, what we are doing there? Union of all the frequent item sets of same size from all the partitions to get the global candidate item set. So what do we do now? Now we need to combine this L1 this L1 and this L1 to get the global candidate item set of size 1. The idea here is the items are frequent in one partition. So together they may be frequent globally or not, that we need to find out. So we are merging all the frequent items of same size from all the partitions. So we are going to get first candidate item set of size 1, which is global candidate. Next, you merge all these L2, L2 and L2. We are going to get the global candidate of size 2. Then you merge all the 3 L3 to get the global candidate of size 3. Finally, we have the global candidate of size 4, which is present only in this partition. Okay. That's what I have written here. Global candidate set. This we are getting by performing that Ck of G equal to union of I equal to 1 to N, then Lk of I. I have shown you that step here, right? I explained also in the algorithm. Let me go back this one. Okay. So by using this, I am getting this C1, C2 here, and I am just written. For example, C1, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 5, right? So C1 of G contains 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Then what about L2? L2 we have 1, 2, we have 1, 3, then we have 1, 4, then we have 1, 5. Then we have 2, 3, then 2, 4 is here, 2, 5 is here. Then we have 3, 5. That gives us the C2. Okay. So I've shown you in the next slide all the candidate items which I have got or obtained by the merge phase. Is this part clear? So I merged all L1 and that gives me C1. Merge all different L2s to get C2. Similarly, merge all L3. Again, we are not writing them again and again. For example, item 1 may be present in all the 3 partitions. I cannot write 1 3 times here, right? Because we are not bothered about the number of times occurring. We are just checking the unique items here. We don't write its frequency, right? Only the name of the item. So combine all the L1, I'll get this. Combine all L2, we are going to get this. Similarly, combine all L3 to get C3 of G. Combine all L4 to get the global candidate item set. So now, second time what we need to, this is the merge phase. We are done with our first phase. The second phase, what it tells us is, again bring the partitions one by one into the memory and count the support of the candidates that are present in the global candidate item sets. For example, first I'll get this partition into memory. Then what I do? I'll check the count of this one. So count of 1 is 1. Next count of 2. So count of 2 is 3. Count of 3 is 1. Count of 4 is 1. Count of 5 is 1. Then count of 1, 2, it is 1. 1, 3, 0. 1, 4, 0. 1, 5, 0. 2, 3, 1. 2, 4, 1. 2, 5, 1. 3, 5, 0. This is with respect to the first partition. Then 1, 2, 3 count is 0. 1, 2, 4, 0. 1, 2, 5, 1. And these two are 0. Then 1, 2, 3, 5 is 0, right? So from the first partition, I try to find the support count of all these candidate item sets of all different sizes. Once it is done, next I'll bring the second partition and now I'll again increment the counter of each of these items. For example, if I take 1, the count was 1. After reading this, the count of 1 becomes 3. Similarly, count of 2 was 3. After reading, the count of 2 becomes 5 and so on. Okay. And then the third partition again count. So at the end of third partition, we would have read entire database and you would have obtained the support count of all these item sets present in various candidate item sets of different sizes. Now you compare these individual counts with the global minimum support threshold. So what is the global minimum support threshold? In this example, it happens to be 3. So the items which satisfy 3 or the items with a support count 3 or greater than 3 become our global frequent item sets, and that gives us the final answer LG. So 1, 2, 3, then 1, 2, 1. So they are the only items which are frequent, that is satisfying the minimum support threshold of 3. So they are present either 3 times or more than 3 times in the entire transaction. So using that's why we are calling them as the candidate. Why? Because they are frequent locally, but globally they are frequent or not, that we don't know, right? Hence we call them as the candidate. And second time we read the database to determine whether these global candidates are going to give us global frequent item sets or not. So at the end we are be having all the global frequent item sets with us, and this is the output of the partition algorithm. You can observe here, for example, if I take this 2, 3, okay, 2, 3 was frequent in the first partition, it was frequent in the second partition and also the third partition, right? And hence it is count is more than 3, so it is frequent. Suppose if I take say 3, 5 for example, okay, 3, 5 is not there in the first partition, 3, 5 is not there second partition, only third partition it is there. So count of 3, 5 is 1. When I compare this count 1 with a global threshold of 3, which is less than that, which is not satisfying the threshold of 3, hence 3, 5 cannot be frequent globally. So 3, 5 is not here. So when you read the transaction partitions one by one and count the support of each of these candidates, at the end we get the items which meet the global support threshold count to determine our final set of frequent items. Is this clear? Any doubts in partition algorithm? So you have algorithm with you in your notebook now, right? So please try these for the other databases for which we have used the a priori, right? Already a priori we have traced for 3 different databases. So on that database now you try your partition, because already you have the a priori answer with you, isn't it? So get the answer through partition. You compare your answer, whatever the answer you're getting using partition algorithm and the answer that we got using a priori, it should be same. If it is not the same, it means you might have done some mistake or somewhere some step. And if you have any doubts, you can ask me during the next class. So please trace it. Without doing on your own, you will never learn, especially all the algorithm that you are studying in data mining. You cannot do it during your test or exam. Then you feel or think it's a time consuming. If you trace at least for 2 to 3 databases before your exam, then exam it is not going to take much time. Okay, so you cannot complain later that it was lengthy. It cannot be lengthy. If you study regularly, if you practice, it helps you a lot. So please do practice, and if you have the doubts, you can ask me. You can ask me now, or maybe you can ask on Monday also. Fine. So any doubts, anyone? Partition algorithm. So if you are not traced a priori algorithm, or if you are not present physically for my last class, then it may be difficult for you now to follow or to understand. That's why I'm telling you, please attend the classes not only virtually, physically also. You may log in, you may go somewhere, or you may be doing something that is difficult for us to verify or to check, right? We hope, we believe that all of you are responsible students. You are in the second, you are in the third year, right? Next year, one more semester, or already companies are coming, you will become professionals. Okay, so please behave yourself, please behave responsibly, please attend the class. Don't take advantage of these online classes or online assignments, online quizzes and online exams. It's whatever the gain you get using these means, it may be a temporary, you may get some marks, you may improve your GPA, but in the long run, it is going to definitely affect you. Your friends who are helping you now for copying, they may not be there in your future when you join some company. It is you who have to work, right? Friend cannot come to you, come behind you wherever you go. So your doubts you can ask me. I'll stop the recording.